Before we get going, let me just say what you're probably going to hear a lot in this next week, and just a big thank you for this weekend. It's been, I think, everything we hoped it would be when we first started talking about this last August and last September, knowing it was going to be 25 years as a congregation. Yesterday was great, the cookout, grill out, fish fry. Today's been great, a new record to be together, a lot of former members coming back, a lot of friends and family. I'm sure we'll think of some things we can do better next time around. But we appreciate all the effort that's been put into today. And appreciate you hanging around for the afternoon service. Let me make the promise to you that I try to make on all these afternoon services. If you will try to not go to sleep, I will try to not get carried away. Is that fair? Is that a fair deal? All right. I know after you eat and you sit down, some of you, that's an every Sunday afternoon thing, right? You eat and you sit down and you go to sleep. I'd say as a preacher, that might be the thing I miss the most on Sundays, is the Sunday afternoon nap. Boy, that was great in college. But if you can try to stay awake for a little bit longer, I'll do my best to not get too carried away. Our theme of this weekend has been celebrate. And we take that from Luke 15, when God celebrates souls coming back to Him, and that's what the church is all about. So we talked in our Bible classes about celebrating forgiveness, walking through those Luke 15 parables. We talked this morning about celebrating home. When the prodigal son went back, he wasn't just forgiven, he was home. And that's what we are. When we come back to God, we're home. We're at the place that God always wanted us to be, what we were made for, with God and with His people. And today we're going to talk about celebrating hope. Maybe my favorite biblical theme is the theme of hope. We talked this morning about some of those occasions in life that's just worth celebrating. Some of those same celebrations, hope rises to the top of the list of emotions you feel. Think about a child being born. It just feels like a time of hope. Anything is possible, and you hope for great days ahead for those parents and for that family. When someone graduates from high school, again, it's one of those hope occasions when we give out books that say things like, oh, the places you'll go. It's a time of hope. When people are getting married and we come together for a wedding, we're not just celebrating, we're looking forward in hope. And just think about what we wanted today to be. And hearing Kenny share some of those things that the elders have been gracious enough to let us ministers be part of those conversations, that our elders and ministers have been talking about, listening to your surveys and your thoughts for our next 10 years. We wanted today to not just be a celebration of the last 25 years, but also a day of hope. Well, we're looking forward. A 25-year anniversary is not the end. We have not arrived. We have hope that our best days are still ahead of us, that we're still wanting to go somewhere with God walking with us and for God's kingdom. That's what we wanted today to be. So we're going to end this afternoon on that note, the note of hope and looking forward. I'm going to take advantage of the PowerPoint tonight, and I've got a lot of different verses from a lot of different places. My hope is, in this lesson, that these verses will just wash over us, that they'll just remind us. My guess is probably 90% of the people, at some point, your favorite verse may pop up on the screen this afternoon. These are verses that have nourished our faith for years as Christians, as the church, and we're going to pull together some of these as we close this weekend together. Let's start with just how foundational hope is to Christians. And let me put up that screen, that slide I just had. We are the people of hope. Of all people on the planet, we should be the ones who are the most hopeful. Hope in its purest form is a foundational Christian virtue. And you saw it first verse I put up there. I think I've got 4 on this first section of just foundational Christian verses. 1 Corinthians 13:13. A couple years ago, we redid our lobby. There's been some neat things out there. I've liked the stone. You see the stone behind me here too. I like the colors. I like how it all turned out. Maybe my favorite part of that, though, is the faith, hope, and love written there on the wall out there in our lobby. Faith, hope, and love. Right there in between faith and love. And if you haven't been around Great Oaks this year, our theme this year is hope in God. We've set it on the shelf for a few months as we've focused on homecoming. We're going to bring it back to the forefront in these next few months as we study together. But look at who we are. Faith, hope, and love. That's who we are. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 3 through 6. He's given that list of things that define the unity of the Spirit. Boy, what's the unity of the Spirit? Well, as he starts listing them, you notice right there in the middle, one hope. This is who we are as Christians. We are people of hope. We all share that in common, a hope in God. 1 Peter 1:3. He says we're born again. And you know, that happens in baptism. We're born of water and the Spirit. When we rise from the waters of baptism, you know what we're born to? He says you're born to a living hope. It's alive in us. It's alive in God's people. It can't be put out when we rest it firmly on the promises and the person of God. And then one more of these foundational verses, just a great image to me. Hebrews 6:19, where he describes hope as the anchor of the soul. It holds us in. It holds us in. I've told you before about my silly sports watching habit that I do. I'll tell you again, especially maybe you that haven't been here. I've gotten to where, maybe it's because I'm spoiled from DVR and all that, I struggle to watch things with commercials now. That's part of the problem. But I enjoy sports, and I want to watch sports, so this is what I'll do. If a sporting event's coming on, and I care about who's going to win, I will record it. I'll record it. And if my team wins, I will watch it. and that's how I do it. And that is so much more enjoyable, because you know why? It doesn't bother me at all. I can watch the whole game, and when there's a bad call against the Grizzlies, it doesn't bother me at all, because you know what? I know we win the game. Like I know what happens here. And if somebody hurts one of our guys, you know, it doesn't bother me at all, because I know where this is going. And that's a silly illustration, but in a lot of ways, that's where we are as Christians. Like, we know where this is going. We know where this is going. That's an anchor. When those things happen that make you want to, man, what's going on with our world? What's going on with my life? This isn't fair. That isn't fair. Why aren't things different? Boy, it holds us in. You know why? Because we know where this is going. God has made all these promises, and our hope that God is going to bring a new and better place for His people at the end of time, where we'll all be together and all be with Him, that's the anchor that holds us in. So hope is who we are, or who we want to be, and who we should be. I think we all realize there's times we don't feel that hope the way we should. When we do that, I hope we go back to some of these traditions, that tradition that we are part of, and just remind ourselves. What I have in this second part of my 3 parts here this afternoon is just to remind ourselves of that great tradition and see how some of these great passages and great people of faith have allowed that hope to hold them in. I think first of all about Jeremiah. The passage David read for us just a minute ago from Lamentations chapter 3. Lamentations is a short 5-chapter book, and most of the book is depressing. You know why? Jerusalem has just been destroyed. It's all destroyed. It's not the same. We're God's people. This is supposed to be God's city, and now it's all gone. What's going to happen now? And Jeremiah, in the middle of describing the destruction of the city, he's looking around, he's saying, boy, it used to be so great here. People used to come worship here. The crowds used to be filling the roads on their way to worship God. And now the walls are down and everything's been burned with fire. But the anchor of the book of Lamentation is Lamentations 3:22 through 24. We've turned it into a song in the English language. The Lord's loving kindnesses indeed never cease. His compassions never fail. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I have hope in Him. How can Jeremiah look around at so many bad things and say, I have hope? You notice what keeps coming up? The Lord is my portion. They're new. God's compassions are new every morning. The sun came up today, and God's compassions came up today with it. God is still God. God is still on His throne. Jeremiah doesn't say, we're strong enough and we're good enough and we're going to rebuild this city. That's not what he says. He doesn't say our talents are in the right place and we've studied and worked, so we're going to make this happen because we got an iron will. It's not what he says. He says, I know God is still there. And so I have hope because God is still there. Look around all the bad things and hope anchors them in. What about Paul? Of all the things Paul went through, he amazes us at the way he can sit in prisons and write such inspiring words for those of us that are not in those situations. And here in Philippians chapter 1, verses 19 through 21, he starts talking about hope. You might know the whole book of Philippians. It uses that word joy in the short 4 chapters. Joy or rejoice 16 different times in those short 4 chapters. He's talking about rejoicing, and he's in prison. What's going on here? He's anchored somewhere, isn't he? And here in verses 19 through 21, he says, I will rejoice, for I know that this will turn out for my deliverance through your prayers and the provision of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and hope, that I will not be put to shame in anything, but that with all boldness Christ will even now, as always, be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. And you notice that. He's talking about hope, and he's talking about getting out of prison. But he says, now, I don't know. I don't know. I might die. I might live. But my hope is I'm going to be lifting up Jesus Christ. I'm going to be lifting up God. And then he ends that little section in verse 21 with maybe your favorite verse in all the Bible. For to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. To live is Christ and to die is gain. What an anchor that we are part of that great tradition. And then I just want to put some verses up here that you no doubt have underlined or highlighted in your Bible or memorized in Bible classes or personal study. And what I want us to notice about these verses is hope is planted on the power of God. And when we have firmly in our minds who God is, hope rises to the surface, no matter the circumstances. Look at some of these. Jeremiah 29:11. Again, a passage where Jeremiah is looking forward to how bad it's going to be. 70 years, God says. You're going into captivity for 70 years. But, he says, I'm going to bring you back. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare, not for calamity, to give you a future and a hope. God talking to His people in a difficult time says, don't forget, I'm not done. I'm not done. I have plans for you to give you a hope. What's that based in? Jeremiah 32:27. It's based in God. God who says, behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? Whatever comes in front of us, whatever challenges pop up in life, verses like this need to be echoing in our hearts. Nothing's too difficult for God. Nothing is too challenging for God. We see things and we say, boy, I don't know how I can face that. I don't know how we're going to get through this. It's not bigger than God. I can promise you that much. God promises us that much. I'm the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? Jesus in Matthew 19:26, Jesus looks at them and says, with people this is impossible. With God all things are possible. With God, all things are possible. Don't set limits on God. Don't decide what you think God will do and what God won't do. Don't decide where you think God won't act. God is big enough to do anything. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. All things. Because where's the strength come from? It comes from Him. It's not yours. It's not you saying, I'm good enough and I'm smart enough, I'm going to make it happen. That's not where hope comes from. Hope comes from the God who gives strength. Romans 8:31, if God is for us, who can be against us? Tough to argue with that, isn't it? If God is for us, who can be against us? I want to line myself up with God. And no matter what's going on in the world or life or anywhere else, if I'm lined up with God, who can be against me? So I want to stand as close as I can to Him because I know where He's going and I want to be with Him. I think this is the last one I have on this section. We could go on and on and on, and maybe that's what we should have done, just read some of these great passages for this afternoon service. Isaiah 40, 30, and 31, a song we sang a minute ago, sure reminds us of this. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. And I just see all those verses, and every time I stumble across them, I think we just want to walk away and just say amen and amen. That God is big enough and strong enough, and God, there's no limits on Him. We want to be with Him. He provides the strength. My third section of this outline this afternoon is just to mention the different aspects of our hope. Hope is not one-dimensional. It includes heaven, but it's not heaven only. And I want us to start with that right there. We have hope in this life. In fact, when Paul was writing there in Philippians 1, you remember what he said? We read just a second ago. He said, I expect to be delivered through your prayers. I expect to get out. I expect that this prison is not the last place I'm going to be on earth. I'm hopeful. He uses that word hope. I'm hopeful that things are going to be different here soon because you're praying for me. We are not only people who say, well, at least there's heaven. At least there's heaven. Now, heaven's worth saying that for. And heaven is going to be, if I understand the Bible right, bigger than even you and I can imagine. Greater than even you and I can imagine. But that's not the only hope that Christians have. Because we're the ones that walk with the God who can do things even here and has done things even here. That's when people like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego can look at the king and say, look, God can deliver us if He wants to. But even if He doesn't, I'm not bowing down to that statue. I don't know what God's going to do, but I know He can. I know He can. And that's what hope says. I know even in this life what God can do. 1 Timothy 4:8 is one of those places that reminds us godliness is not only for the next life, it holds promise for this present life also. It is a multidimensional hope. This life and the next one. Doesn't get better than that, to walk with God in this life and the next one. And then Philippians 4:13, you think about this life, you think about the strength we need and long for. Again, that comes from God. I heard a preacher say a while back, and I've been saying it in my mind ever since, God may double your load and triple your strength. Whatever happens to the load, God can do even more than that. The water may feel like it's rising to you and me, but boy, God can go even higher than that, can He? God can double your load and triple your strength. You talk about hope for change in your own life, in your own world. God's still there. We are the people who know anything is possible because we have a God who has a track record, who's always shown us He can do anything that is best and needs to be done. We also have hope for the church. Every now and then you hear about somebody's faith, or you hear about a certain congregation, or you hear about different things, and we'll have those conversations together, won't we? And we'll say, boy, sometimes I worry about the church. Sometimes I wonder where the church is going to be at. I know the church has always been impacted by culture, and it's always going to be impacted by culture, I suppose, until Jesus Christ comes again. But it sure feels like a time where culture is pushing things and pushing the church, and sometimes the church giving in on some things that they shouldn't. And so we wonder, boy, where's the church going? God makes promises about that too, doesn't He? Didn't Jesus say in Matthew 16 that even Hades can't stand against the church? Church isn't going anywhere. Church isn't going anywhere. In fact, Daniel chapter 2, way back when Daniel prophesied the kingdom of God, he said it's going to be an everlasting kingdom. It's not going anywhere. From the time it comes, it's going to be here forever. Why is it going to be here forever? Jesus says, I am with you. Again, it's not because the church is so smart, the church is so big, the church is so whatever. Jesus says, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Who knows what culture will do? Who knows what decisions congregations or people or Christians will make? We're sure going to try to be as faithful to God as we can be here and do as much for God as we can do here. But I know the church ain't going anywhere because God is always going to be with His church. Paul had hopes for the church to grow and grow and grow. As he writes here in Colossians, he says, devote yourselves to prayer, keep an alert in it with an attitude of thanksgiving, praying at the same time for us as well, that God will open up to us a door for the Word, so that we may speak forth the mystery of Christ, for which I have also been imprisoned, that I may make it clear in the way I ought to speak. God can open doors, can He? We need to be praying for that in our own lives, in our own church, in our own community. God is the one that opens doors and opens hearts and opens minds and gives opportunities. Let's be praying that doors will continue to open. And then last, but certainly not least, is that great hope of eternity. That even when this life is over, there's something even better waiting for us. For Paul to be able to say, to live is Christ and to die is gain, you're talking about something special. And God makes some special promises about it. He promises it's going to be a place where the tears will be wiped away, no death, no mourning, no crying, no pain, all the first stuff, all the stuff that frustrates and hurts and bothers us, all that stuff is going to be gone. All the ways we see imperfections and unfairness and evil in our world, all that stuff's going to be gone. What's maybe even better to think about, Will mentioned it at the beginning here this afternoon, is we're going to be together. We're going to be together as God's people, It's going to be a place where all of God's people of all time will be together. Jesus pictures it like a big banquet together, a big homecoming potluck lunch, perhaps, where we all get to be together and talk and laugh and be with God Himself for all eternity. As the song says, we've been there 10,000 years. We hadn't lost a day. It'll just keep on going. Jesus describes it as the joy of our Master. I believe God knows how to make us happy. He made us. And if God describes it as a place of joy, it's going to be a place of joy. And I imagine we're going to get there and we're going to say, boy, I wish we could have been here sooner. I spent my whole life saying, well, I just don't know if I'm ready to go yet. Boy, now that I see it all, now that I see what God had waiting for us, boy, I wish we'd always had this. As the Bible describes, we won't even remember. We won't even remember the former things because it's not going to matter to us anymore. It's not going to matter. Something even bigger, even better. I know we live in a world that so often feels a little hopeless. Sometimes we turn off the TV at night and just wonder, man, where are things going? So much anger, so much hatred, so much unfairness, so many things that don't seem to be getting better anytime soon. But of all people in all the world, we should be the people of hope, where hope can rise to the surface, even in difficult times, even in questionable times, because it's based on the promises and the person of God. One last verse this afternoon. I told you we'd have a lot of them. Romans 15:13, where God is described as the God of hope. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that you will abound in hope. So He wants you to have a little bit of hope. He wants you to abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. May we be people that abound in hope and people that go forward in the strength that hope gives us. We can face the world without sticking our head in the sand, without too much worry, without too much fear, because we walk with the God who made the world and still works in His world. Let's be people of hope. This afternoon, if you're not right with God, come back to God. Come back home to the God who can fill you with hope and strength and forgiveness and a hope of a better place when this world is over. If you're not right with God, maybe you've come in this afternoon ready to become a Christian. Maybe you've been thinking about it. You're ready to confess your faith in Jesus Christ, to commit your life to live for Him and have your sins washed away in the waters of baptism. We would love to end this weekend by seeing you become a Christian, seeing you begin a new life in Jesus Christ. If you're here today and you feel like you need to come back to God, we'd love to pray for you about whatever is going on in your life, sin, difficulty, or anything. We're a family that wants to lift each other up. If we can help you in any way, you're invited to come to the front now while we stand, while we sing.